Oh, okay. So, who here has heard that song before? Raise your... That many of you have heard that song. Guys, I just Googled it. That song came out in 1997. That means most of you are like -7. You're just twinkles in your daddy's eye, okay? And so that is a long time ago. I was 10 years old, and I grew up with 3 older sisters. And so I grew up having to listen to NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. Only in the summer, usually in the winter, it's 35 to 45 degrees. And then there were some other bands that were like, Christina Aguilera was huge. She wasn't really a band. Britney Spears, she was huge when I was younger. Boys to Men, yes, but they were kind of like R&B-ish, like, I swear. Okay, anyways, I'm not going to sing, but guys, it's been a great journey through this relationship series, Dating Delilah. Some of you've been uncomfortable, you have been challenged, you've been questioned, and we had last week this image. We had 2 people on stage, and it was the world, and it was the Christian's view of what relationships are. And we just talked about, man, that understanding of relationships is getting more and more different with the world and with the Christian person. And unfortunately, I mentioned this last week. I said, unfortunately, we as the church aren't much different. And so I wanted to challenge us to be better, to grow, to challenge ourselves, to be willing to listen and let God's word speak for itself. Because most people are like, well, I'm just going to do what I want to do. But God has a specific plan for relationships. And so I thought we'd do something a little different this week. I actually want to welcome some of my friends on stage, and we're going to have some questions. We're going to have some fun. And of course, it'll be a little uncomfortable, but I hope this is a different way to challenge us to understand what God's view of relationships are. Because I can get up here and talk about what the Bible says and talk about some experiences I've had, but man, what if you heard from some other people about what God's plan is for relationships? So I am going to welcome up 3 people. Everyone, give them a round of applause. They're coming on down. Come on down, wherever you are. Woo! Okay, oh, and we have waters. Good. What'd you say? Okay. Oh, man. Good to see you, brother. What? What?
It's my code word with them.
All right. Hey, the bros can hang out over here. That's cool. All right, so here's the deal. I have a couple people up here that are really cool, and most of you probably know some of them, but I just want you guys to introduce yourself. What's your name, and how do you serve here at Eastside?
My name is Jason.
Hi, Jason.
Thank you very much.
My name is and he's the Arby's guy. Okay.
Yeah. And I am one of the group leaders for the freshman boys. Where you at, guys? Huh?
Not boys. Dude, that's no love. I saw a couple hands up here like,
We'll work that out later. Don't worry.
Jason. All right, go ahead.
I am Miranda.
Hi, Miranda.
I belong to this one.
Okay, so they're married. That's what it means. She doesn't literally belong to him. They have made a covenant of marriage between God and country. Okay, carry on.
And I am a young adults leader. So college girls.
Woo! Okay, see that's freshman guys.
You guys taking notes? Huh?
Yes. Freshman guys, give it up for Jason. I heard.
Thank you, freshman guys in the back.
Yeah, that's who haven't been through puberty. Freshman. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, freshman guys. Accurate.
I'm Amy Hasselbring. I
Whoa, okay.
Thank you.
Well, that's someone's popular.
I'm
No
the Children
favoritism.
and Families pastor here, and I'm also a young adult girls leader. And what else do I do?
You do a couple things.
I
What do you
know.
not do?
What do you not do?
I do other stuff. I don't know.
Yoga.
And I'm married to Matt, but it would be Mr. Hasselbring, who teaches PE at River Valley, that many of you've probably had.
Dude,
There you go.
how
Yep.
did your husband get a louder cheer than Jason? Okay. Give it up for Jason! That really hurt me. Okay, carry on. Okay, so we're gonna have some fun, and we got a married couple here, and then I want to hear the same with you and Matt. But how did you guys meet? You guys have a really cringy / Can you share that story with everyone?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, that's one of my top 37 stories about how someone had met.
All right.
37.
There's
Yeah,
going to be a lot of
that's it.
judgment on this, but that's okay. I forgive you guys. So I was actually at the mall with my buddy, and we were getting ready to leave, and we were just talking. He's like, hey, man, a girl I've been talking to works at the shoe store down the street. We should go down there, and you can meet her. I was like, okay. So we go down there, and lo and behold, we were talking to her. And she walks away to help a customer, and he looks at me and he goes, what do you think? I was like, if you mess this up, I'm going to take her from you. And he laughed. He thought it was funny. So when she came back, before he could say anything, I said, hey, baby, why don't you drop the zero and get with the hero?
Oh.
That's a true story.
And then you guys were engaged next week, right?
No, actually,
No, week after.
Yes.
he left, and I told my friends, he's cute, but he'd be cuter if he kept his mouth shut.
Oh, woo! Yes. No, he didn't. He failed it.
Hey, it was close. It was close.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that's pretty special.
Yeah, that's exactly how
that
went
is
down.
amazing. What about you, Amy? You and Matthew, or Mr. Hasselbrink?
Well, we actually had such a great adventure together that we both met while teaching.
Okay.
It was not very exciting. He taught PE, I taught English, and hey, you know what? The rest is history.
Yes, those are interesting.
See what you did there. I like it.
Okay, so just to lighten the mood, what is a funny experience you guys have had together? What is something like you? Obviously, you were deployed a couple times. You did how many tours?
I did 3.
You did
I have
3
a total
tours?
of 40 months in a combat zone.
40 months. Okay, so this is a man up here. All right. This is okay. Now we clap. Okay, good. They at least are patriotic, and we're actually neighbors as well. So. Yes, and we serve on an HOA, which I'm sure. Does anyone know what an HOA is? Homeowners. He's the president. I'm the vice president.
That's
Okay.
right. We tell you how high your bushes can be.
Yes. So pay your dues. Okay. So, anyways, just tell us a funny story, relationship story that you guys might have.
Actually, that was what we were going to tell.
That's what you're gonna say.
That's probably it right there.
Okay.
man.
Leave hero or leave zero. Get with
Yeah.
hero. Okay.
Well, I guess we could double down on my corniness for that one because, yeah, we'll go with that. So when I got back, I was going to show our age for this. So
Yeah.
I got on MySpace.
MySpace.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
In
thanks.
1984.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Around there. Yeah. Thanks.
I'm joking. Internet
'cause
wasn't really around.
When we first met, I actually deployed about 3 or 4 months after that. So then we didn't talk for a year. So when I got back from Iraq, I got on MySpace, and I started where I left off and put on there, hey, babe, if you want to be swept away, you know where to find me.
Wait, what? After
Within
being
24
deployed?
hours, I had a text.
If you want to be
So after she was when she was working at the shoe place, you thought it'd be a shoe-in, right?
Yeah.
Get it?
Shoe
Anyone?
in. I like
Shoe-in?
it. Terrible, right? Terrible.
And okay, so that's pretty special. All right, what about you? Do you have anything with you and Matt?
We're pretty boring.
You're pretty boring? You taught English? He teaches gym?
Yes.
I forgot to mention, guys, I'm going to put a number up here. I want you guys to text some questions you might have on relationships. We might answer them, but at the end, I'm going to answer some questions that you might think of. And I will have it. This is my number that you're going to have, that they're going to put up there. And so I will vet your questions. So just because you text it doesn't mean it's going to be up here. So not vet. How about censor? I will censor your questions. But just so you know, I saw some people pull out your phones. So here we go. I'm going to jump in and get very serious now because we had our fun, and I'm going to ask a question to the ladies first, okay? And so I want you guys to be ready. What should a young woman look for in a godly man? What should they look for?
number one, that he loves Jesus. So he should be, Jesus should be number one.
Yeah, that's the thing that came to mind too. I think about being your age, and that really wasn't the thought at that point in my life. And I wish now that I would have known what you all know. And definitely, girls, find the guy who's not ashamed to say he loves Jesus and to pray with you. That's super important.
That's awesome. Okay. On the flip side, Jason, what should a young man look for in a young woman?
I would say character. I mean, how they present themselves. Is it in a following of a biblical manner? Like, when they speak, is it something that's thought of? Like, they speak with the mind and not with the heart? Do they dress appropriately and modestly to present themselves?
I think that's huge. And we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But we're all saying the same thing, that we want someone to love Jesus. It's that simple. And so sometimes people ask me, hey, what do you think? I'm talking to this person, and I'll just come back to, hey, do they love Jesus? Doesn't mean they're perfect, doesn't mean they're all the way down the road yet in their faith, but that should be the very, very first place to start. So people say, well, is that number 3? Or no, that's number 1. Do they love Jesus? And you guys answered that we should look for someone who loves Jesus. I'm getting a ton of good questions, guys. What are what you would say, as we already just said, one non-negotiable, they love Jesus. What are some other, what you would say, non-negotiables in a dating relationship? So love Jesus. What would be some other non-negotiables in your own thought?
I would say respect of boundaries.
Okay.
So I think there should be boundaries set, and both should be respectful of those boundaries. 'Cause
Okay.
especially you guys' age, that's hard. And knowing from like mistakes and things that I've been through, I would say set boundaries and be accountable to each other, and maybe have friends that hold you accountable to that, to those boundaries.
And you said something interesting, set boundaries before you start dating. Most people set boundaries after they've already messed up. And I've said this year after year, it's a lot more difficult to take a step back and try to set boundaries after you've already made some mistakes. But it's better if you're proactive. It's better if you're on the proactive side before you even start to, hey, these are some of the boundaries that I want to set up from the get-go. That's huge. It's going to save a world of pain. What else? What are some other boundaries you guys would say non-negotiable?
I would say don't cause either one to compromise who you are. So if especially ladies, if you have an idea of that man that you're searching for, I have a friend who, for years, she had a list. She had an exact list of what her man was going to be before she would even accept any kind of a dating, request or anything like that. And she just prayed a lot about it. And I thought she was crazy at the time. But she never allowed herself to be compromised in any way, shape, or form. And she has an absolutely amazing marriage, amazing kids. She got the man of her dreams. So
That is awesome.
don't compromise.
Okay. Non-negotiable. Anything else? Anything else you guys want to throw? Okay. We already mentioned boundaries as a non-negotiable. And so I wanted to talk about that a little more, because I'm looking at some of these questions you guys are sending me, and I love it. I've already got 24 questions. Some of them are funny. Okay. But let's talk boundaries, because that's the majority of the questions that I'm seeing. So we said boundaries. Do you really, and I'm trying to think of this, because we talked, was it last week, about the why? So many people, you hear, don't have sex, don't do drugs, don't do this. Why? Why does the Word of God say that? Like, why is that an issue? And so I want to talk about boundaries. Why is it so important to have sexual boundaries in a dating relationship before you're married?
So we've talked about this before. So sex is something that is very intimate between two people. And it's something that once it's given, it can't be taken back. So once that relationship has been made there, that's forever on that. So crossing that line, that's something, you have something that nobody can just take or recreate.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to give that up for that. And that's one of those things to think about do you want to sell everything that's deep inside of you in that moment for them?
Yeah.
And to have that boundary, because we talked about having those boundaries and making sure, you don't compromise on those things, because you don't know what the future may hold on there. But we do know, what God says in his word about waiting for that and sharing that intimacy with your spouse.
Yes.
So, we were talking about that this morning, I think, or last night. And that's something that, we both kind of had our own regrets from when we were younger, of not necessarily waiting that long.
Do you think it's because, did anyone ever give you a talk on boundaries when you were a teenager?
No.
And so it was just no one was engaged in having that conversation with you. And so it was like, whatever, this is just normal.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Especially in today's society, because, I'm sure all of you guys have heard some of the music we listened to back in the day. You
Yep.
get a lot of that rap music, and it became a norm and a stance for those things. But when you look back at it, like a lot of that stuff that's put in Hollywood, the stuff that's put in the music, it doesn't actually build a respectable individual. And I'll tell you guys, and I've talked to my guys about this, and I'll probably go into this a little bit later, but, being a leader and being a follower, and having that respect for yourself on those lines. And it can start in those deepest, intimate pieces. So you got to watch where you're giving yourself away and who you're giving yourself away to.
Absolutely. What about you ladies?
I would just say, I tell him, and I've told our girls, that regret that comes when you cross that line, and that feeling that you can't go back now. So you keep going in this mistake that you hate every time that you make it. And I say, of all the mistakes I've made, that's the mistake that I regret the most, is sexual sin, because it takes a piece away every time. You feel less worthy, you feel less of yourself. You're not the person that God meant for you to be when you've given bits of yourself away every time.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. And there's a portion in Scripture, that, and I'm not exactly sure if it's referring to this very thing, but I've always felt that it does in a way that we're going to have a desire, girls, we're going to have a desire for our husbands. And I do feel like that God built us emotionally intimate. And when we give ourselves over physically to our husbands, which is God's design, then there is a connection that is made, that is an emotional intimacy that we crave as women. And if it's not fulfilled, if we're trying to fill that with random people that we're dating, we're never going to have that filled, because that's not the design of what God wanted. He wanted us to be with our husbands who will be with us and who will give us that. So I think that's really important to remember. And, if you have already and you have regrets, then it's never too late to pull back and say, that's it, I'm not going to do it again. God is forgiving, he is loving, and he wants you to keep yourself pure, but that doesn't mean that it's ever too late. So that's just something to remember. And girls, you want your wedding night to be super special. And guys, I remember having a conversation with Matt about some mistakes that he made in college and how hard it was for us. It was hard for me to get through him being with other girls before I met him. And I'm not saying that in a way that makes it, it almost sounds like he was like some, weirdo guy that was out doing, but it's just something that comes up after you're married, that because you're supposed to keep yourself for your spouse. And when you don't, then again, that emotional piece comes up. And it's different for guys than it is for girls. I would suspect that, Matt and I've had that conversation. It's much more emotional of an attachment there. So.
Absolutely. I've said this before, and I think it's purely because, one, I was a teenager at one time, believe it or not. And the other thing is because I've been in student ministry for so long, is I can tell when a relationship goes from just, hey, we're getting to know each other, it's early on, we're friends, to now it's a sexual relationship. It is scary how much you can tell. It's because I believe God has created a relationship in a certain way. And when you add elements in that you're not supposed to yet, it changes the game. And man, I'm getting such good questions. You guys are awesome. And so I think about boundaries, it's to protect something that's sacred. I've heard it from all of us. And what I'm hearing is something that's huge. Each one of them in their own way, cryptic and all, has said, man, we made mistakes, and God is faithful. And once you cross those lines, it doesn't mean that God can't redeem you, can't heal certain things, but it does mean that there is some trauma that you got to work through. And I got a good question here. I just want to throw it in there. When did you guys start? When did you start changing your relationship to put God in your relationship? I love that question. Like, what was that switch where you're like, okay, God's got to be the priority? What'd you do? When was it, and what'd you do? Yeah, because did you guys start dating before you guys gave your life to Christ?
Yes.
So that adds a completely different dynamic to now it's like, oh, who's Jesus? And then it's like, oh, Jesus is Lord, and so that probably changed the game completely, even the dynamics, the philosophy of how you approach the relationship. So, yeah.
What was the question?
The question was, that was an intimate moment between him and I, like, answer the question. Okay, what did you guys do once you started putting God in your relationships?
Okay, let me.
So, I mean, there like a lot changed for us on that, honestly, because
When we first got married, so the first 4 years of our marriage, I was home for 2. So that made things really difficult because, so I got back from Iraq, we got married. When I came home a year later, I went from being newly married, living in an apartment, to married for a year, now living in a brand new house that I had just bought, sight unseen, and then with a brand new child as well. So it changed a lot on there. So we kind of had our own little hiccups in there. But when we started putting Jesus in our life, you could tell the change. Like, our bond grew closer. Like, our family got tighter on there. We haven't had, don't get me wrong, we still have our hiccups and our little ups and downs that we hit, but they're not mountains and valleys like we used to have. We had a real hard time there for a while because, like I said, I went to Iraq and I was used to being single, taking care of myself. And I came home, now I have a wife I have to take care of. I have a baby I have to take care of, and I had a hard time dealing with that. That was a hard time.
Yeah.
I bought a $4,000 four-wheeler that I totaled and shattered my collarbone, and all I got was, I told you you'd kill yourself on that thing.
And then I sold
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and then she sold it for $1,000. So, but you could definitely see that there was the difference when we did, because I don't know, it seemed like it really brought us together a lot more as we were focused on the same thing. And especially with, our 3 girls. I know a lot of you guys out there know our 3 little girls. And seeing the impact for them,
Yeah,
what it's done, has been
absolutely.
great.
I love that.
He swam his way out. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know my story. I was married previously before I was married to my husband now. And I was young. I was 22 when we got married, and God was not in our relationship. I grew up in the church. When I went to college, kind of strayed away. And my daughter, Mackenzie, it's her dad. And so she was born. We were together for about 6 years without any kind of Jesus in our life. I still believed in him. It ended in divorce because there was no God in our relationship. And I look back now and I see that was missing. And so then after I met Matt and we got married, that whole concept of unequally yoked came up. And I realized at that time that he was raised Catholic, was not really a church attender, And I grew up in a church much smaller than, but very similar to Eastside. And so I'd made the decision that I was not going to do that again because my first marriage just did not work out. But I'd say that once Matt made the decision to follow Christ, about 2 years into our marriage has never been better. God is the center of it. We know that. We do everything with him first. And sometimes, when we start to think about something, we realize that we've got to go and we've got to ask him to be a part of it too. So very good example of no God and there is God in both of my marriages. And this one, I can say, it is till death do us part. So
That is awesome.
I also want to add, I grew up in church too, but you wouldn't know it by the way I acted. But talking about unequally yoked, and I think that's super important for you guys to know and to think about, is because Jason didn't believe at all. So I believed, I didn't act, you'd never know, but I believed, and he had no interest in Jesus whatsoever. So even from that moment, it was hard because I had the belief, and as soon as we had our daughter Bella, I said, we need to raise her in church. And so there was automatically that tension because that's not what he wanted. So that's something that you guys have to think about, how much tension and how awkward and difficult a relationship can be when you want to follow Jesus, but you want to be with this person and they have no interest. I mean, luckily, God got a hold of him, but I think that's really important and nothing that I ever thought about because that was not spoken to me.
And I think that's huge because most of it is a lack of communication. And the more I've studied and the more I've researched in this area, because I have my own kids, they say you have to be open about these things. You have to communicate them because the church world did this for so long. No, it's not happening. Just don't do it. And now it's like, now we're living in a world where no one even has any standards. And so I actually have 3 or 4 people asking, what is an age that you would say would be a good age to start dating? I mean, you have a daughter who's in college and you have a middle school daughter. What is an age that you would suggest? Man, I'm not going to let my daughter or son date till they're 16 or 17. Have you guys thought about that yet?
Okay, mean mom moment. I was the mom who wouldn't let my daughter date until she was 16.
Yep.
My parents would not let me date until I was 15, almost 16, but they had to meet the guy before they would let me go anywhere with him. So that was the most embarrassing moment of my life. I still remember it to this day.
I love that.
So is there an age, y'all? It's when you feel like you are emotionally ready to be able to to have your boundaries, one, to know what you are absolutely not going to compromise on, and to have a strong faith. Then you're ready. Gosh, don't rush it. I wish I would have not rushed it.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing, that you can't really put an age on it because everybody's at their own levels for each age. But definitely make sure you have standards. Ladies, if a guy shows up to your house and he texts you, "I'm here," don't go outside. Her cousin did that. And I told her, I was like, if this guy texts you and says, "Here," you're not going outside. I went out, got in the passenger seat, buckled in, and said, "Let's go."
Yeah.
Then he slowly backed out of the driveway. I was like, no, I'm not going with you.
That's great.
I would say, and I'm probably mean mom too, but everything that I've been through, I would say, I like the idea of a courtship, which is so old school, but honestly, really, isn't that what dating is about? You're dating someone, you're taking it from a friendship to something deeper because you're looking for a spouse. So if that's not what you're doing, then why are you dating? Like, that's my thing. Like, I wish that I had thought that way your age, early college years or whatever, because really that's what it is. Otherwise, why can't you just be friends? Like, dating is supposed to lead to marriage. That's what you are. You're looking for this spouse that the Lord has for you.
That's true. And I said this a couple of years ago, and I got a lot of slack, and there was multiple breakups. I said to a couple of I announced to our youth group, I said, if you are with someone right now dating that you cannot see yourself with the rest of your life, I'm not saying that you're 100% there, but if you can't see, like, man, I like him or I like her, but there is no chance I'll be with them long term. Time to be out. And I had a couple girls and guys coming up to me angry. I got dumped because of your message, you know? I'm like, hey, man, I'm sorry. Better luck next time. You know, like, yeah, you're welcome. What can I say? Okay, but the thing is, you need to date because of the ages in this room. You need to date. Not saying I need to be married in 4 years or 5 years or 7 years. You need to date with it in the back of your mind. Could I see myself with someone like this individual that I'm talking with? And we as a culture, we flip everything. We get in a relationship and then we add the sexual things immediately when that just puts so much pressure on a relationship. It's like, we're together, now we have to do these things because that's what relationships do. And what I'm hearing is the slowness, the steadiness of it. And I'm going to get very honest. I had a bunch of questions saying, hey, what is too far? What sexually is too far for a Christian relationship? I got a bunch of those questions. So a lot of us are asking. And we've said don't have sex. But are there other things that we would say, no, I don't believe this is honoring to God? There's so many things, yes. And that is the, look at it, everyone's like, no. Yes, Jason, like he's doing, okay. But that, hey, I'm just relaying the messages. That's all I'm doing, just the messenger. Go ahead. Say whatever you're gonna say. If I get in trouble with parents, I will blame you, okay? No, I'm joking.
I mean, in the context of sex, I mean, before sex, I think, you know, you're talking about
Oral sex?
any type of groping could be too
I
far.
heard
For that. I mean,
did you hear everyone? There was a, aw.
yeah, it was like,
I don't care, okay? Get over it.
But it is, 'cause I mean, they go across those things. I mean, if you're rubbing up against each other, you're probably going too far.
Yes. I always say don't go horizontal in any way. Laying down on a bed, on a couch.
Yeah.
Do not lay next to someone. Otherwise, you get comfortable. You get if I lay down, I fall asleep, and everyone's like, "Well, we just fell asleep together." Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So,
Kobe.
I think we were talking about this not too long ago. You feel that conviction in yourself, and you know you're wrong.
Everyone, and that's a good point. The conviction. It's going to be, some of us know when that line is happening because it leads to something else.
Yep. Yeah. And it's at that moment, you know, you get your emotions going, your heart gets racing, everybody's like, but you need to have that self-awareness and self-control of those things, and remember your boundaries for those. So there's a lot of different scenarios that you could find yourself in, but you need to recognize when you're crossing that boundary and understand that this moment should not affect the rest of your life. So you have to think about everything that you do can affect, you know, the trajectory of where you're going in your life for that stuff. And it has an impact. So it has stepping stones. Like when I used to do briefings for high school kids, we used to talk about backwards planning for stuff. And you have those different markers in your life that you want to reach. But one marker can send you off in a totally different direction, right? So me and a buddy of mine, going through high school, we did everything together, old Dustin Sutton. 19 years old, one marker changed my direction, joining the Army. I'm not saying join the Army, just saying that's what changed me for that. Dustin Sutton had a different marker. He decided to go ahead, well, he didn't decide to, but he got arrested for the possession and intent to distribute methamphetamines and went to prison. So one marker in our life sent us both on two opposite directions for somebody that we were on the same glide path. So
when you look at that, know that, we're going back to, we'll bring it back into the sexual boundaries. If you're rubbing up against each other and you can feel your heart racing, hop it into the couch. That's it. Yeah, hey.
I was just going to add that it doesn't matter in what point. If something inside you is telling you to stop it right then. Mm-hmm. Because there's regret for me. The very first time, I knew it was wrong. I didn't want to be doing it, and yet I still let it happen. And so I tell him, I was like, why, in my head, I'm like, I don't even want to be here right now. So why am I doing this? So at any point, just stop. Just stop. Because the conviction is still there. You can still listen to it.
Absolutely.
I think the only thing I want to add to that is just don't put yourself in those positions to have to make those decisions. Don't put yourself in a car alone together in the dark at a park. Don't
Why'd I mess up? It was only 2 a.m. We were
Don't
tired.
go to the basement in your parents' house to watch a movie laying horizontally together. Apparently horizontal. But yeah, just know that goes back to boundaries. So, if you're kissing passionately, you might want to put the brakes on. Just saying.
Yeah. So I think about all this, and I'm thinking about I got a ton of questions. We could talk forever. But I hear you, and a lot of us, we have some confusion. And the thing is, it is so different than the world's view on relationships that it's almost like, really? Like that's what God wants? But the reality is it's not because God is a killjoy, it's because God wants to protect you. And I've been on the end where counseling, premarital counseling, weddings, and I'm not lying. I have sat in rooms counseling people as they talk about their prior sexual experience, and every single time they've said, man, we've worked through this. It's been a huge obstacle for us, talking about our past sexually. And I've never heard anyone be like, yes, my spouse was with 15 people. I'm so happy about that. I've never met that. I'm serious. You guys laugh, but that's actually what I deal with on a common basis relationship-wise. No one wants to be in that position. So when God says, hey, I want to protect you, I want to honor you, I want you to be protected in this area and have great enjoyment with your spouse and that relationship and grow together, it's because he wants to protect the relationship. He doesn't want to take away. He wants to no pun intended for the event coming up this weekend, he wants to flourish it. And so I just want to segue into this really quick. Ladies, if you've not signed up for our girls event this weekend, we have Miranda. She's speaking at it. We're so excited. She's one of our main speakers. Amy is one of our speakers for it. We have workshops. Guys, it's going to be incredible. If you have not signed up, go online. We have, I think, like 80, 90 people with leaders, students, young adults. We want you there because we want you to have a relationship that is growing, that is flourishing, and the big thing is to educate. Most of us, we don't know because we've never been taught. And so that's why we teach on this every year, because some of us are like, I never really thought about it. Every week since we started this, I've had someone sit me down and say, I've never heard that before. I've even had people tell me, my dad told me to go and have sex with people to see if we have chemistry. And I'm like, wait, your parent is telling you as a high schooler to go have sex with as many people as possible to see if you have chemistry? And I'm like, what? Like, those are things that I hear from you guys. And I want you to know that there's a different way. And even if you've screwed up, we serve a God of grace and redemption. And he's going to use your story, and he's going to shape it and shift it and help you and make you better for it. So everyone give it up for Jason, Miranda, and Amy.